Again, instead of asking this question, Jeremiah Bentham claims we should rather ask a simple question: can they, the animals, suffer? Human industry alone is continuously causing immense suffering of animals, which is systematically disavowed. Not only laboratory experiments, but special regimes to produce eggs and milk, like turning artificial light on and off to shorten or lengthen the day, use of hormones, and so on. Pigs who are half blind and barely able to walk, just fattened fast to be slaughtered, and so on and so on. All of us knows what goes on here. But this knowledge has to be neutralized so that we can act as if we don't know. One of the ways to facilitate this ignorance is the Cartesian notion of animal-machine. Cartesians were warning people against compassion with animals. The idea is that when we see an animal emitting sounds of pain, we should always bear in mind that these sounds do not express any real inner feeling. Animals do not have souls. They are just sounds, these sounds generated by a complex mechanism of muscles, bones, fluids, and so on, that you can clearly see through dissection. The problem is that the notion of animal machine quickly ends up in Lamettrie's notion of l'homme machine, of a human being as a machine. If you are a fully committed neurobiologist, exactly the same claim can be made about sounds and gestures emitted by humans when they are in pain. There is no separate interior domain of soul where the pain is really made. So, what should we do here? What if, that's my proposal, the perplexity of a human looking at a cat, what if this perplexity in the animal's gaze, tortured animal's gaze, is the perplexity aroused by the monstrosity of the human being itself? What if a human sees in the abyss of the wounded animal's gaze, what he sees there reflected is his own monstrosity? Or, in Hegelian terms, what if instead of asking what is substance for subject, how can subject grasp the substance, we should ask the obverse question: what is the rise of the subject for presubjective substance? My favorite Catholic theologist, Gilbert Keith Chesterton, proposes such a reversal precisely apropos men and animals. Instead of asking what are animals for humans, for our experience, one should ask what man is for animals. In his lesser-known essay, Everlasting Man, Chesterton makes a wonderful mental experiment along these lines, imagining the monster that man might have seemed at first to the merely natural animals around him. A quote from Chesterton: "The simplest truth about man is that he is a very strange being, almost in the sense of being a stranger on the earth. In all sobriety, he has much more of the external appearance of one bringing alien habits from another land than of a mere growth of this one. Man has an unfair advantage and an unfair disadvantage. He cannot sleep in his own skin. He cannot trust his own instincts. He is at once a creator moving miraculous hands and fingers and a kind of cripple. He is wrapped in artificial bandages called clothes. He is propped on artificial crutches called furniture. His mind has the same doubtful liberties and the same wild limitations. Alone among the animals, man is shaken with the beautiful madness called laughter." Again, another distinction of which I am not so sure. As if he had caught sight of some secret in the very shape of the universe, hidden from the universe itself. Alone among the animals, man feels the need of averting his thought from the root realities of his own bodily being. Whether we praise this thing as natural to man or abuse them as artificial in nature, they remain in the same sense unique. So what I'm saying is that I'm definitely not trying to convince you into some new age attitude of, in the animal gaze we see how animals feel the same as us, understand us, and then you end up with all this bullshit of trees secretly talk among themselves and so on. No, but what I'm saying is that nonetheless, it's much sadder, is that if you turn around the perspective and ask simply yourself, not what does it mean for you, this gaze of the frightened animal, but what the animal, what do you see? Do you see in the animal's gaze? I think you see your own monstrosity. You see precisely that which philosophers don't want to see. In short, I cannot develop it now, read my next book and so on, the 51st that you have said. You see what Freud called death drive. You see that excessive violence of which good philosophers were aware. For example, just briefly, Immanuel Kant has a wonderful text, small text, unknown, on education, where he provides his famous definition of what is man. Man is an animal who needs a master. And then he explains why. He says that there is a kind of, he uses the term which is usually translated as unruliness, a kind of wild, irrational excess of violent freedom in man, which animals don't have. This is why animals don't need education. So Kant is here very precise. He's not saying that it's the nature in man which has to be educated. It's precisely, let's call it a nature turned against itself, an excess of wild freedom, and maybe this is what animals see in ourselves. I mean, you know, this is always the question to ask if you want to be good Hegelians, and I am. For example, instead of asking, do Christians treat properly Judaism? And then you get these rather boring debates of usually defending Judaism in the sense of, oh, Christian notion of love misses the point, anxiety of God in Judaism. A much more interesting question is, what were the first Christians in the eyes of the Jewish establishment? What monsters they were? What monstrous excess this was? Always, this is the question to be asked. We have a similar example. Do you remember some 3 years ago, I think, some explorers deep in Argentinian jungle it was reproduced in all media, a photo of some tribe which was not yet touched by our so-called civilization. It was the first contact. And you see in color those frightened faces looking us. We see our monstrosity there.